Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Cognac, the show of Greek and Roman mythology, London, Brazil, and so much more. With today's guest, Zahra Bates of Courvoisier Cognac, the national brand ambassador. This recent chapter led Zahra and I to chat during the San Antonio Cocktail Conference, talking about all kinds of things, but one thing is very clear. Zahra is a student of the world, a student of the classics, and hospitality gave her what she was looking for as a shy individual. And as she says, you come into the hospitality industry finding the thing you never knew you were looking for, or did you know you were looking for it all along? So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoyed this chat with Zahra Bates.
Because the first year that the event had volunteers, every meal, like people were, obviously it was so kind and so generous for people to feed us while we were working, but every meal they're like, oh, we're in San Antonio, we should definitely, because all these people were visiting from other parts of the country, we should make sure that they get San Antonio tacos,
right?
Or they should get burritos. So it was always tacos every meal, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Are you okay with that? Are you okay with tacos every meal?
Well, this is the really funny bit, is that when we actually finished, and we all went to dinner together, or we actually all went to lunch together, and we didn't have to get tacos, we all got tacos. We were like, we're going all the way.
It's like almost like going to a white elephant party, and then everybody buys the same gift.
Exactly.
It's like, wait, really? You knew what I wanted? I knew what you wanted. I thought you wanted this, and it's the same thing. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think all of us just want tacos.
Who doesn't want tacos?
I don't really know who doesn't.
I don't trust anyone who doesn't like tacos.
Have you ever met anybody that said, oh, tacos, they're just not for me?
If I have, I probably have blocked it out.
It's traumatic. I mean, and I don't want to give tacos too much press or too much credit, but the fundamental concept of having a starch wrapping around a protein with another starch and flavor and spices, herbs, and all that, I mean, that's Greek. You've got a Greek wrap. You've got, sandwich, a hamburger. Like, everybody has their version of it. It's the perfect way to deliver. Egg rolls.
They're all basically, or spring rolls as well. Yeah. They're all ways to carry your food with you when you go to work.
A food vehicle. It really is. It really is. All right, so this is good. Now I'm hungry, so we're going to get out of here. We're going to have to get some tacos. But there's a lot to talk about. You studied in London, it looks like. You're living in L.A. You grew up in Morocco. This is a very rich, jet-setter kind of lifestyle. So let's kind of take it back. And so you are born and raised in Morocco, is that right?
No, I was born in Morocco. My father is American. My mother's Moroccan.
Oh, interesting.
My father was stationed in Germany at the time, and he was on TDY, so they were doing a lot of their kind of military tests and that sort of thing. And my mother's like, I'm going home. I'm not doing this by myself. So I was born in Morocco. Almost all of my Moroccan family is either in Morocco or Europe. My father's side of the family is mainly in West Virginia.
No kidding.
Yes.
That is a very interesting, disparate collection of
Most definitely. Well, I think it runs in my father's side of the family to the opposites attract. My grandmother was a Jehovah's Witness. My grandfather's an atheist. My mother's Muslim. My father's agnostic. They're getting closer and closer together.
Well, you know what's great about that? You got all in and then nothing.
Yes.
It averages out to right in the middle.
Exactly.
Good, great, moderate religious beliefs.
But the wonderful thing is the core value that both sides shared is that be good to people, be kind to one another, treat each other with respect and generosity. And I think that those are pretty much the core values of the hospitality industry.
I think so too. I think that the hospitality industry, maybe it's rather like a metaphor for how people should be.
True.
You ever notice, though, people that treat each other poorly, they'll go in and they'll treat their servers poorly.
That's quite true.
It's very strange.
That's very true.
I don't know that I've met somebody that is really terrible to people but nice to the service industry. Like it's like a petri dish of us in our purest forms of how we're going to interact with each other.
As a kind of, if you're going to say, okay, this is a general rule, I would say that I agree with that. But there are occasions, everybody has a bad day. Everybody has a bad day.
Yeah,
people go through things. And sometimes, if that is generally how they are, I worry.
Yeah.
But if sometimes people have a bad day because you never know what they're coming from.
Right.
One of the experiences that I had that kind of formed me as a person within this industry was coming across somebody that was really acting poorly towards me. But
in which sense?
In the sense that he was yelling, kind of slamming things on the bar top, very, very disproportionately reacting in an angry way.
Got it. Blowing things out of proportion, right.
But what I found out was that as I kept being kind and showing generosity, he actually broke down and started crying and said, I just found out that my brother is diagnosed with a degenerative disease that is not only, and his only sibling, not only going to rob him of his health and his life, but also of all of his memories. So even essentially he's going to be dying alone, even even when I'm there with his with him. But he was a young person. He wasn't an old person. Yeah. So to see your only sibling going through that, he was devastated, and he was reacting out of that. And we have that onus to be kind and generous even when the person in front of us isn't being that way, because you never know where they're coming from. You never know what they're dealing with in that day.
Well, it's empathy, right? It comes down to that. So true. I feel like we're not trying. It's interesting. So we bring it. Let's bring it up a layer, and talk about societal things and kind of social things. But do you feel like people are losing outside of hospitality? I think we're doing pretty good there. On the streets, at work, do you think we're losing the ability to empathize with each other?
I think we're losing the ability to recognize, because we don't interact with humans as much as we used to.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Which thankfully for the hospitality industry, we provide a space for humans to congregate and have human interaction.
Yeah. No shortcuts there. You have to show up.
You have to look someone in the face and order something from them, and you have to sit next to another human being.
Yeah.
So we're keeping alive that ability to connect and empathize with one another, because that's why bars and restaurants keep growing at an exponential rate. Yeah. It's not just the fact that the cocktail, it's the golden revival of the cocktail as well. Consider this happened at the same time as the internet age really started taking effect, and we spent so much of our lives either on a smartphone or sitting at a desk looking at a screen.
I never thought
people needed to reach out to one another, and that was a convergence of two things coming together to kind of bring this industry back to life.
I think you're right. Do you listen to music pretty often?
I do.
Me too. Right. So we love music. Yes. So vinyl it keeps increasing as this section of the market. Because, I think at least that you have to experience it. You have to be there. You got to pick up the needle and you've got to move it. And so, to your point, maybe you think that there's this vacuum created, that all the technology, and as I kind of pantomime holding a phone to my face, like that this is causing us to really seek out and crave those interpersonal connections.
I think so, because a human baby actually can't survive if they're not held and touched.
Yeah.
Humans need interaction with others. We will always search each other out because we need one another. And to be able to be part of an industry that fills that need, I feel very honored and blessed to be.
We're counselors in a sense, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Well, not me as much, but
no, it's true. Who gets the chance? People are always being talked at, but who are the listeners of the world? It really is people standing behind bars.
It's so strange. I never thought that you could parlay being in the hospitality industry as being the pressure release valve for very, very egocentric technology use, right? And
absolutely.
That was a very wordy way to put it. but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Okay, so then it makes me wonder. So, Zahra, you've got this amazing kind of concoction of backgrounds genetically,
Yes.
And if I understand correctly, you were thinking, though, well, I'd like to study linguists. I would like to study English. And so you pursued that in London, is that right?
I was a bartender in Los Angeles at the time, and my boss at the time had brought in back-to-back a bartender from Brazil. I've been bartending for a very long time. This was back when caipirinhas and mojitos were like a big deal.
The thing. Yeah.
They got really, that's what, in 1994.
Oh my God.
He brought in a bartender from Brazil, and then back-to-back he brought in a bartender from Cuba. Not directly, obviously.
Yeah.
Back then it was really strict.
It was a strange boat kind of thing. Really.
He brought them in to teach us about, this is how you make a daiquiri properly. This is how our country makes daiquiris and mojitos. And then this is how our country makes, the United States does not make caipirinhas the way that gauchos consume caipirinhas.
Okay.
But he was generous enough with his view and what he loved to make sure that we were able to offer that to our guests, that he brought, and I got very excited at that point in curiosity. In 94.
That's way ahead of the time.
So I started traveling to different countries. So I went to Cuba, I went to Mexico, I started traveling Jamaica, to places that had rum or that did cocktails that I'd always loved, like Player's Punch, and found out what they did there and tried to kind of build my knowledge. And when I was in Cuba, I came across bartenders from London in Cuba. And we started talking, and I told them about my curiosity, and they said, you have to come to London. This is, like, we're really starting to kind of move stuff in this direction. Because all I was talking about was, okay, well, I've had all these cocktails in the Caribbean. I'm like, I need to know more. So I went back home to Los Angeles in 1998, and went back to school, started studying so I could apply for a student visa to go to London. So I went and applied and got accepted in London.
There,
got accepted in London to Westminster University whilst I was doing my degree there. And I figured if I'm going to do a degree there, I might as well be in things that I love. So I got a degree in English literature and linguistics.
Incredible.
And during that time, I worked at the Sanderson Hotel and at a place called 57 German Street, and really got a serious education in cocktail making there.
Why would I may have heard of 57 German Street?
57 German Street was a members club, but it was the bar that the bartenders from Che used to go after their shift. Okay. And Che at that time, this was from 2000 to 2006, Che at that time was considered the best bar in the world. Wow. And so they would come in and sit in front of my bar as I was making drinks, and they would give me tips, and I would ask them questions. And I've still, to this day, I can't believe that I was lucky enough to have them come to my bar and sit, and just because I was enthusiastic, and they were helping me for nothing.
That's incredible.
But that's this industry. People want each other to succeed.
I think so. We'll talk about kind of the future state of what the hospitality industry is, and maybe bartending and stuff like that. But I want to dig in a little bit deeper into, because you're saying you returned to school, which means you pursued it once already. Is that fair?
Yeah, I did an associate's degree before then, but
any area of focus? Because I'm trying to figure out.
I was studying the classics, so
literature again, yeah.
Literature, but it was classic Greek and Roman mythology.
So
is
Homer
what I was focused on.
Virgil
exactly.
And things. Interesting. Okay.
I'm a nerd about everything.
But I like that. So all right, we'll nerd out for a second. Who is your favorite? We'll go Roman mythological character.
I would probably have to say Minerva.
Tell me about
Minerva, because she was like the goddess of war, or whatever, but she was also she was thoughtful. Okay. She planned things out, and I believe
methodical or thoughtful.
Well, she's definitely both. Being methodical is very important to being behind a bar, and I feel that she was pretty incredible.
And so Ares is her male counterpart, right?
Yes.
In Roman, okay.
Well,
no relation, or are they married, or?
No. She was actually born as a full adult out of Zeus's head.
Interesting.
That's her story. She had no mother. She was born out of his mind.
That's amazing.
He had a headache at one point, and his head cracked open, and she came out, and she...
Some great ideas, I think.
So if you ever see an owl, that's her animal that kind of is her representative. So from Clash
of the Titans, the owl that is with Perseus, right?
But that was kind of like a melding of within... I know that movie. But that was supposed to kind of... It represents her, but I think that it also normally... I believe Mercury is the fleet of foot, but I think he was kind of melded into the owl as well.
I see. Okay. So
but the owl definitely represents her because she represents kind of knowledge and being methodical and kind of being very good at planning out kind of point counterpoint war strategies.
So it makes me wonder. You have this. It feels like a very, very deep, rich understanding of the classics of literature. Why did you not pursue that? Or you did and you shifted to hospitality. What happened there?
I believe that the hospitality industry allowed me to use every aspect of myself and not just my mind. And I wanted really I considered it living a full life because the hospitality industry really pushes you emotionally, psychologically. You have to be able to be very thoughtful and concise, and you have to be a critical thinker, all of these things, but they have like to Minerva, be instantaneous when you see somebody walking into a room. Wow. You have to be able to do all of those things, and you have to sustain it for minimum 8-hour shift. Yeah. Most shifts are way longer than 8 hours. Right. So, but you have to be able to sustain that. And I felt that actually challenged me as a person, and that's why I fell in love with this industry so wholeheartedly.
Man, it's funny because normally I'll get some ideas for questions as I'm talking to people. Like, there's so many things I want to ask you. It's like, well, should we talk about literature? I mean, she was in London for a while, But I guess so. For someone that seems so, at least to me, down to earth yet really insightful and erudite, L.A.
Yes.
I've got my perception about L.A., probably tainted slightly. But what took you there? Because you were in West Virginia, and that's kind of where you were raised. Is that right?
I was raised mainly on military bases.
Got it. Okay.
So we were, my parents were stationed in Northern California, and I wanted to not be that far away, but I wanted to go to a big city, and I'd been going to San Francisco at the end of every month with my parents. So I was like, well, I want to keep exploring different parts of the country. And so I went down to Los Angeles and learned a lot while I was there of hospitality. And you would be surprised hearing that because a lot of people don't think that about Los Angeles, but I happened to, as I said, it really had to do with the bar that I was working at.
Where did you start working?
I started working at a place called Bar Marmont.
Okay.
The first time I was behind a bar, and Sean McPherson was the owner there, and people in the hospitality industry in New York know that name because he's also moved on to open a number of hotels and bars in New York. But he originated in Los Angeles.
In LA.
Well, he originated like his restaurants and bars there. But he had a commitment to this industry. He had a clear focus and a passion of what it was that he wanted to do. And he wanted everybody that worked with his team to be as passionate as he was. Yeah. And so he shared that with us.
So it seems like, was your lust, or lust, it's not a dirty word, I promise. Your insatiability for knowledge and learning and culture, do you feel like the cocktail process really catered to how you like to think about the world? As ingredients from Cuba, ingredients from, Puerto Rico.
I think a lot of it actually comes down to the fact that I come from a military family. You'll notice that there are a lot of people that come from the military that end up either working in a kitchen or a restaurant or either front of house or back of house or behind a bar because there is a sense of structure to it and there is a sense of purpose to it in the same way that you say if you have a platoon within the military, you have to rely on one another to make it through the next day. Everybody lives. There's that's the goal. Yeah. No man left behind, right?
Exactly.
So there's a very similar mentality about the hospitality industry is that you can't do it without the person standing next to you or the person that was prepping before you or your bar back. It takes a team to make something happen, and which comes down to Startenders. Like they're really what's the point? Nobody makes it alone. We need each other to get to where we go, and honoring one another is really important. Honoring the people that came before us is really important.
Absolutely. Well, here's a really strange tangent. So one of the things that's interesting, versus where this is a very strange tangent. One of the reasons that the Nazi Germany worked, is because they didn't pay, or they, you could say it's slightly after this, but let's just put it this way, not paying homage to the history and the actual culturally relevant icons that brought us where we were.
Right.
Not paying homage to that allows you to create a new society which has no foundational skills or compassions or ethics.
Right.
Right? You see what I'm saying? Like, if you create a society out of nowhere, what do you have to stand on? Right? Because we say like, oh, the Constitution. But like, we don't really think about Thomas Paine. We don't really think about Thomas Jefferson. We don't think
Adam Smith or
that's right. Yeah.
Edmund Burke.
Yeah. So these kinds of things happen. And so we can say that star tending, you can't do things without a team. Do you think that it is a problem that will continue to kind of expand and proliferate, that central self-centeredness in this industry?
This is the thing. You have to have a strong ego to work behind a bar.
Sure.
Because you have to be able to control a room. So there will always be an aspect of it. But the people that have longevity, when I think of people that have done this really well for a very long time, I think of people that really embrace the fact that nobody makes it alone.
Right.
People work well in teams. When I think of people like, say, Alex Day and Dave Kaplan, they're a strong team. Their support system is strong. They make sure that everybody shines within their team. But they have longevity in the industry. When I think of somebody like Audrey Saunders, it's because she gives and gave knowledge to her team to make sure that they were able to succeed and in depth because she believes in her team. And these people are the ones that are going to keep continuing doing well because it's not about, oh, look at me, I'm so great. Right. It's about, look at us, look what we can do together.
Do you think you're destined, not you particularly, but do you think someone's destined to burn out if they don't allow the team dynamic to make them better?
There is always a way of when you say yes, you're always going to, if you're always pulling from the well and not putting anything back, it is going to be difficult for you to be sustainable.
Do you feel like that's kind of really the nature of the universe, though? That it is a balance? You have to kind of replant every tree that you dig.
Exactly. That's part of why working for the company that I work for and it being so important, water being so important, sustainability being so important, is because of the fact that, because I work for Courvoisier, if they stopped using like these pesticides because bees are dying out and we can't
grow more bees.
You can't. Well, the thing is that really, they can't pollinate grapevines without bees.
Right.
So you have to make sure. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that everything that you do is going to give back to the earth that you're using. They have been growing wine there since 3 AD. To be able to continue with their traditions, it's a very small town with very small growers making this for all of the houses that are there. They have to honor the earth. They have to make sure that they give back what they take. Otherwise, they won't be able to survive past that. So
perfect metaphor for people, right? So
exactly.
Pay homage, work as a team, revere the things that you're kind of imbibing in.
Exactly.
Well, so, man, it's such a wonderful palette of background academia. You've worked in hospitality for so long. I think I'm curious as to what that conversation was like to step from behind the bar to beyond it and traveling around, talking to people, representing a brand. You've done other brand work, though, if I understand correctly,
yes.
Right? How long have you been on the brand side of things?
I've been on the brand side almost 2 years with Courvoisier.
Okay.
I've worked as a bartender representing a brand for events or going to do something and a lot of bartenders do that. There are bartenders that's their sole focus of how they work.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful way to work, but you also, as you said, you have to keep feeding yourself, making sure that you are nurturing yourself. But the thing that I feel is the biggest change and the biggest difference is that it's a lot of working alone when you're representing a brand.
When you're on the road, right?
Because your team is in the office and you're kind of representing your team and making sure that you're looking out for your team's interests. But you're not with them all the time.
Do you like that? Do you like being kind of the lone gunman on the road?
I am an only child, so it comes in naturally. But that's what I love about working behind bars is that you have people that you rely on. It really is, people always say, oh, my bar family. It really becomes that close because you are physically constricted to work that closely with one another. So I miss that intimacy, even though I have a great, strong team and family feeling. It's just we don't see each other enough. Right. I want to see them more.
Man, it's. Do you like that? So, only child thing makes a lot of sense. Right?
Yes.
In a good way. I had a couple, a few friends over the years that are only children. I'm like, oh, I get it. Kind of gets it. So, how do you feel about the performance aspect of being on the road? For example, facilitating a seminar, facilitating a training, which is kind of taking yourself away from the group dynamic and being on stage solo.
I was terrible at it at first.
Really?
Because being behind a bar and the type of bartender I was is that I was the exact opposite of a star-tender. Is that I felt when somebody sat at a seat in front of me at a bar, I took a spotlight and put it on them and made them the star of this experience. Selfless, right? That was the whole point of them coming out, is because how often did they get somebody to look after them? And because at work, you're working and you're trying to make sure that you achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve there. At home, there's also certain relationship goals that you have to achieve. But you go out and it's just a moment of looking after yourself, maintaining a conversation that's different than the norm.
Right.
But when I was standing out alone, being like, okay, pay attention to this guy now.
You're the representative of this thing.
And it took me a while to actually turn it around and say, well, I'm actually here to share something that these people have come into this room and they want to know.
Got it, okay.
So if I make it an interactive experience, make sure that they're part of this experience and that they're able to jump in whenever it is that they feel comfortable and make it an inviting experience, then that's when I started getting better.
Because you probably felt better about it. Like
much better.
Collaborative.
Exactly.
Because you are more team. Do you find yourself at times to be an egoist, where your interests are the things that are most important? I'm getting the sense that that's a no, but
it's never about my interest. Yeah. I try and consider myself to be the voice for our small growers for our cognacs.
Yeah.
So we only work with growers that only have 5 hectares of land to 25 hectares of land. That's tiny.
Yeah.
And one, they don't speak the language in the United States, and two, they don't ever really leave that area to come here. So who's going to speak for them? Yeah. Who's going to speak for our master blender and our team that's working, and they stay inside the chateau, or they go and look at the grapes, or they're going to source the trees? I have to be the person that talks to it. So I'm representing them, not myself.
That's a big responsibility, isn't it?
It is a very big responsibility. And to be able to honor something that has traditions that go that far back is very important to me, to make sure that I'm able to be as elegant as they are, be as kind and giving as they are. Otherwise, I would feel like I was failing them, not myself.
I think that's a really lovely thing. It actually makes you cut out to be and this is not a critical or an invective, but perhaps you could serve your community politically too. Right? Does that ever interest you? I mean, that's a tangent.
Absolutely not. I don't have.
No good. No.
I'm only political in the sense that I want to make the world we live in a better place.
Yeah.
But I feel that the way that we make the world a better place, that we live in every city. I also have a nonprofit that's called Art Beyond the Glass, but it's all based in hospitality.
Yeah.
And the great thing about this is it is the core of who we are as hospitality providers. Is it's really about, all we do is the organization of it, and then local bartenders actually create the art. They create the kind of theme of the bar that they're going to have. They do tag team bartending. Everybody gets to experience it, and then all of the money raised gets reinvested, but in that local community. It can only be a local charity.
That's amazing.
So it makes the world a better place a little bit at a time.
A little bit at a time. I like that. So before, because I want to talk about this grape chapter.
Yes.
Let's call it the grape chapter. But I do have one question kind of before that.
Mm-hmm.
In doing all of this amazing work for other people, making your patrons feel at home, making your team feel aligned, do you feel like you give yourself what you need? Whether it is spiritually, physically, you take the time out to take care of yourself, body, and mind?
I am one of those people that is kind of those outgoing introverts.
Yeah.
Is that when I was a child, I was incredibly shy to the point where if somebody looked at me, I would blush.
Really?
And I need people. I feed off of the energy of having other people around me, and I feel better and stronger as a person. That makes me feel good about myself and strong, and
like that.
Is being with people that also want to make the world a better place. So that feeds me.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I don't like going to spas. It's not.
Do you like massages?
I do not like massages.
I'm really hard pressed to get a massage.
Really, I find it very awkward. I have a friend called Carrie Ha. She and I both have like these little photos of those scary clowns like in the forest. This is what I see when you try to hug me.
Oh my god.
It's a running joke between us. It's really not that bad. It's really not that bad, but it used to be really bad. It really used to be that bad. I was that shy.
Yeah.
But this industry, that's the main reason why I got drawn into being behind a bar, is because I was so shy that I was afraid that I would never be able to live a really full life because I wasn't able to connect with other human beings.
Wow.
And this industry allowed me to have that, which is why I think it's so important for me to be parts of teams and to connect with others.
That's incredible. I mean, that really is a moving piece. I don't think a lot of people go to the hospitality industry to learn how to connect with people. It's a way for them to demonstrate the way in which they can already connect with people, you know?
Partially, I think people come to this industry for what it is that they need. It gives every person what they need. And if you're open to it, if you're willing to take what it has to offer, then you can grow as a person, I think.
That's really incredible. It is touching. I don't get touched that much. Not literally, but like emotionally, you know. But that is, I think it is much like life. You're going to get out of it what you're seeking to get out of it. Really lovely words. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So I think about, you talked about Cuba, so I think about sugar cane distillates. Yes. I think about other kinds of things, but just these specific chapters, these specific disciplines and spirits.
Yes.
So here we are, the latest chapter with Courvoisier, which is 2 years in, you're saying. And
yes, 2 years in.
What drew you to the amazing, really, really underrated in a lot of ways, world of grape spirits?
Cognac first I was very lucky because I worked in fine dining restaurants a lot of the time. I always had a sommelier to go and talk to, and they shared a lot of their knowledge about terroir, about varietals of grapes.
Yeah.
And then when I was in London, I was introduced to Cognac, and I was introduced to Cognac, the category, through Courvoisier, which is, I think, like anytime you're introduced to something during a very kind of potent time in your life, you always have a very emotional attachment to that thing that you were introduced to.
You're totally right. That's why certain women, you're like, wait, why did I date them? Oh, yeah. That period, right? Sorry.
So that is why I'm so attached to that, is because it was something that
nostalgic
kind of, absolutely, that opened up my world really to something that I hadn't had the chance to really have an in-depth knowledge about before. Yeah. Whereas I was in Southern California, my agave knowledge was we were very lucky because we were so close to Mexico. Sure. I was able to actually go to Mexico and go to distilleries there. And when I was in Jamaica and when I was in Cuba, I was actually very immersed into the rums there. So I was having all of this knowledge, but I didn't actually get the knowledge about cognac until I went to London. And that was when as I said, I was really getting that education about the hospitality industry. And so I associated the two. And when I came back, I was offered a lot of different brand works, but I waited and waited and waited until it was the one that was right for me.
It's amazing.
And I was very, very lucky to be able to work with something that I personally has such an emotional attachment to.
It's an amazing opportunity to be able to share that with people, because that's going to be something that jumps off the page when you're in a room.
Absolutely.
Being able to share the story, the narrative, what that looks like to be at the vineyards, right? Or is that the right word for them?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love grape spirits now. I'm going to say, because I like punk rock, I'm an Armagnac guy, right?
Ooh, yes.
Because it's a little bit more rustic, and that's not cognac producers' fault. That's more how people have embraced the spirit. Like, people don't really know about Armagnac in the States as much, you know?
It's not as readily available, so it's like exciting. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's also a great product. And I am a big proponent of anything that actually gets people drinking in the category. Helps everyone, because there's room for everything in this industry. Yeah. I also love pisco as well. Anything that comes out of a grape, I love.
Well, it's not a bad policy to have. So tell me some things about Courvoisier. I'm absolutely familiar with the brand. What, let's say I've got a pretty tuned palate. Yes. I like sipping things that are oaky, but I also am okay with sipping things that are higher proof. Mm-hmm. Of the things you guys offer, what do you think is the best bottle for a little more medium level, moderate, expert kind of drinker?
So for our house, every single bottle that we do, every mark, when I say a mark, it's either VS, VSOP, XO, Napoleon. Every mark that we make has its own recipe. Oh, because if you think about varietals, we're sourcing crus from different growing regions. It's similar to this. We mainly have the same varietal, which is Uni Blanc, but then we're sourcing from different growing regions, which are called crus. So when you source from those growing region, the actual grape itself tastes different. Therefore, the juice tastes different. Therefore, the eau de vie tastes different.
Oh, eau de vie, thank you. Yeah.
So, and then there is the aging process, whether it's in a dry cellar or a humid cellar. So, and how long it spends time in the wood really affects it as well. Right. So, based on how long it's going to be spending time in the wood and where it was sourced from, it's really going to change the recipe of that mark. So, because every mark legally has to be aged in different times, we actually make a recipe based on the fact that it has to be aged for different times.
Which it makes lots of sense. It's like wearing clothes that flatter you at certain ages, right? It totally is. Is that a common thing for cognac, or do they just use the same recipe and age it different areas?
Every house is different because they're aiming to do something different. They're aiming for a house style. Right. So our house style, we want to stay as close as possible to the eau de vie. So we want you to know what that actual eau de vie tastes like. Right. We want to use the wood as an ingredient, but not something that will cover up what's actually there.
Gotcha.
So different houses want to, say they want to provide maybe some more oomph. Mm-hmm. They'll actually leave it in the wood for a little bit longer, so you actually get something that's slightly weightier.
Yeah.
So we are considered to be very subtle, elegant, and kind of. We do have a lot of complexity. We are considered to be very aromatically complex.
Interesting.
So that is our specific house style. We can't have too much wood and still continue to be aromatically that complex.
And I think that's a brilliant thing, and that's a constant struggle with bourbons, right? People, they just assume, and I've seen it firsthand. If I only drink 12-year-old or older, it's like, well, why? What if a 7-year-old tastes good? You're not going to drink it? That's basically like turning down so many amazing pieces of art because it's like, well, it's not on canvas, it's on clay. You know what I mean? It's so strange. And so it seems like the approach you guys take is exactly what it needs to be for each aging container, I guess you could say.
That's the goal. And also, when you're considering that, say you're making a different type of cocktail, you would never, for our house, I would never use one, like Mark say, I'm not going to use the VS to make champagne cocktails.
Right.
Because the VSOP works so much better because that recipe actually does method traditionnel. So that's much closer. And that's the same traditional method that champagne uses. So it just makes sense to connect. Exactly. Yeah. So different, and it has a viscosity to it because of that on the lees method. On the lees means that traditional method of fermentation. So because that's available, I would prefer to do a sidecar with the VSOP because a lot of people say, oh, my sidecar tastes so thin. Well, it's because you're probably using something that has a clear wine fermentation and distillation process. So for that particular one, you might want to add a bar spoon of sugar into your shake. Yeah. Whereas if you're using something that isn't on the lees or traditional method fermentation and distillation style, you don't have to worry about putting in that bar spoon of sugar.
Ruggedness,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So think about the base that you're using for the cocktail that you're trying to create.
Yeah.
And that's the same for anything, whether it's bourbon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Different gins are going to provide a different profile for a different type of cocktail. Absolutely. There's certain gins that work better for a gin mule than there are for
martini. Just thin and
exactly. So you have to really be a lot more thoughtful in your process of cocktail making than just saying, oh well, it's like coloring by the numbers in a book. Right. I only do this way of cocktail making. Well, actually, maybe be a little bit more thoughtful about this, because you're actually going to be honoring all the hard work that, some 85-year-old grower. And, well, no, I mean, not just the distillers, but these are people that are growing and making the wine themselves. Like, how are you honoring what this man's been doing and his family's been doing for generations if you're just painting by numbers?
Man, that's a good point. I think people are prone to put ranch dressing on everything, right? It's like the same kind of thing.
There's nothing wrong with ranch dressing.
No, I have no problems with it at all. But one size doesn't always fit all.
True.
You've got to be versatile, and you have to think about things.
Sometimes you need blue cheese.
I think so. Exactly. So as you kind of travel the world, travel the States, talking and evangelizing grape spirits, in this particular case, cognac, is it getting easier? Have you noticed a change in the way people are responding to the trainings, to the ways that you conduct classes? Are they more open to it than ever?
I think there's still so many questions about cognac, because cognac has, just like wine, there's a lot of questions about wine as well. Yeah. And you have to make a great wine before you can make a great cognac. So a lot of the questions actually have to do with terroir, and because people first, they find out, oh, well, it's made from grapes. Yeah. Hold on. And then they have all of the questions that come from oenology. Yeah. So you cover that stuff. And then, so it just keeps getting more and more and more in depth, which is wonderful for the people that have kind of been nerding out on it for a while. They're like, I've been waiting to talk about this for so long.
Someone asked me about this. Yeah.
But it just keeps getting more, the questions keep getting more in depth.
I think do you think that that's because people have access to more knowledge now? That they're
absolutely
self-initiated, or going to go real deep into a topic now?
But also, people don't feel as intimidated by the category. First, there was because it starts off as wine.
Right.
How we get taught how to make a daiquiri.
Yeah.
We get taught about sugarcane process and the different styles, what region it comes from. We get that education, but we don't get the wine education as a base before we get, because we know about distillation, we know about fermentation and yeast strains, but what about the actual growth of grapevines and why you have to plant them 3 meters apart, and why there's rose plants in between every single row in every winery you'll ever see in the world? There's so many things that have so many. They've been doing this for thousands of years, so that knowledge is exactly. So it's intimidating to try and get that much information in. When you talk to Assam, they've studied for years. Right. It's not just something that, it's like, there's a reason why you call somebody chef, is because they've studied for years to get that technique. You can't just be like, okay, I've been behind a bar for a year and now I know everything about everything.
It's a lifelong process.
It's a lifelong process.
And that's just one chapter of it, right? Like the agave piece. Oh my gosh, we go deep into mezcal. We go deep into gin. We
talk about a terroir spirit. Exactly.
Oh my God, it just spins my brain. But that is the exciting and the riveting part of it too, is that the knowledge is ceaseless. You can keep finding out new things.
And thanks to science, they keep giving us more information.
Those bastards. Yeah. I just want to relax now and again. I want to turn this off, stop thinking about stuff. So you are here in San Antonio. We talked about the Team Taco with Mr. Jonathan Smolinski, wonderful gentleman from Vancouver. You have a class that is tomorrow, right?
We have a class on Saturday.
With Robin Nance.
With Robin Nance.
About grapes, I hope.
It's called From Grape to Grain.
Yeah.
It is about the historical links between Scotland and France.
Oh.
So
I like that.
She is the national ambassador for Auchentoshan, and she is talking about everything that has happened through history. We'll be talking about how long that old alliance has been along. And when I say old, it's A-U-L-D. And that is a Scottish name for the alliance. For the French, it was called the V, Alliance de Vie. It's also old, obviously, in French. So we've been... we had a common enemy, England, and so we banded together. And we'll be talking about that and sipping through both Auchentoshan and Courvoisier.
That's amazing.
And talking about whatever it is that people want to talk about when it comes to both of those categories.
Lots to learn, of course, and a lot. I think you're going to get really insightful questions. It seems like the people that come to the conference every year, they keep getting more insightful and more self-initiated.
Absolutely. You know? And because it's been here now, this is, I believe it's 6th year.
Yeah.
And because it's been here now and people are coming from all over the country to be part of it, now there are people like willing to say, oh, okay, that factor of like, I remember when I got to meet Jason Cosmos here for the first time. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so excited. And like, I just like wouldn't ask him a question back then. But now because I've been coming here for 6 years now, I'm like, oh, I can ask. It's Jason. It's not just Jason Cosmos, you know? So like it's a great place where the city is completely walkable. It is a very unpretentious group of people that come, and an unpretentious city, and so everybody's so open to connecting with one another. It's such a wonderful experience every year.
It's amazing, and I can't wait to see how the conference grows, and I get to talk to more and more incredible personalities. So I've got 2 questions. One's for me.
Okay.
But I'm trying to guess. I'm trying to hypothesize where your career will take you next. Can you even think about what that looks like? Are you wanting to own a bar? Are you wanting to...
My goal is to get Courvoisier to a place where there is more than just me working on it. There's because obviously I have such an emotional attachment to this brand that is my goal. And I believe it'll take about 5 years to have
That's pretty reasonable, I think.
So to make sure that there are people that will take care of my baby, essentially. That's where I see my career going.
Before you can hand it off. Makes a lot of sense. Well, so here's the question for me. And I ask this sometimes to people.
Yes.
I'm really excited to think about who you'd want to hang out with. So this is the question. So let's say you talk about London. Keep mentioning the American bar at the Savoy, so let's just talk about that bar, right? So you're sitting there getting a cocktail of your choice, and you could sit and share a drink and have a conversation with anybody alive or dead. Is there anybody you would like to spend a good hour, 2 hours with, just talking about life with?
Jean-Paul Sartre.
Sartre, oh, okay.
There's so many questions I have about his writings and about existentialism in general. And there's so many links, but obviously for me, it's being able to go to coffee shops that he was at, being able to see the places. Because I go to France, I have that attachment to it. I would love to know what it was that brought him to bringing the students to march. You know, all of it. I would love to kind of know more about how he got to thinking about life is what you choose to make it. You may have things that happen to you, but how you react is up to you. How did he get to that thought process? That I just find that thought process fascinating.
It is. It's incredibly fascinating. Man, brilliant. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you, and having never met me or know who I am, and to spend some time here during the San Antonio Cocktail Conference up here at the St. Anthony Hotel. Really a great experience for me. Thank you so much for spending some time, Zahra.
Thank you, Mike. It's been wonderful.
Likewise. Chat soon. Thank you. Well, there we have it. The amazing Zahra Bates has had an illustrious career in this world, in this industry. It's nice to talk Roman mythology. It's nice to talk about French philosophers. Step outside the boundaries of booze and hospitality just for a few moments. So it was really just an amazing experience. She's so light. She's so lively. She is so enlivened and motivated by the world. It's just brilliant to see that shimmer in her eyes when you talk about things like people, when you talk about things like France, the classics. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V with Mike G. no matter how many of these musical intros you're keeping track of, as I am, to make sure I'm outputting enough music for you guys, or if you're going to ever shake that obsession you have with 80s horror movies and TV shows, please keep dancing.